I always tell people, despise not small beginnings, right? And
Right.
embrace those moments in your life wherever you are. And for
Yeah.
me, starting at that level in an organization, I didn't even have a sight on who was in the C-suite. I didn't even know what a C-suite was, at that time, so I didn't have aspirations to
Mhm.
actually, okay, I know what I'm doing and I'm going to get right there to the first seat in that chair. I'm going to be the
Right.
first woman ever in the role. I'm going to be the first Black person ever in the role. I didn't have that journey.
How did you walk out and witness to such a large organization, being the lead in that?
What's so interesting is that it wasn't like an overnight sensation. Having grown up in the
Mhm.
financial services world from the age of 19, I actually
Right.
began at the front line in
Mhm.
a retail banking center, which we also know as a branch in a
Yes.
neighborhood,
Yes.
servicing clients.
Yes.
And from that position, starting as a teller in a branch and working my way up through the organization, there was a
Yes.
lot of preparedness that happened along the way.
Yes.
My journey was literally, look, I'm starting as a teller. I'm going to school. I want to do good in
Yes.
society. I
Yes.
found a love for banking because
Yes.
it's at the heart of the matter in terms of helping people live a better life and leave a legacy financially
Mhm.
for their children and their children's
Mhm.
children. That
Mhm.
spoke to me.
Mhm.
My service orientation allowed me to be good in banking. So as a teller, my charge was to be the best teller I could be. And then
Mm.
when I went to the next levels, I just wanted to be excellent where I was. And I also took every opportunity to take every class, every certification, every licensing, and every training that they offered me. This opened the door for me to lead at larger levels. So before I took the role as the Chief Human Resource Officer for two global organizations, it was just
Mhm.
the last one is the one I just retired from. I actually ran businesses. I had full P&L responsibility for up to $12 billion dollars of assets in an organization.
Yes.
So, how do I do this at this global level? It's
Yes.
leaning on my experiences and the preparedness from my past, but also leaning on God in the supernatural because I and you and everyone else has a point in their life where they come to the end of their personal capacity.
Mhm.
And I can tell you that in the last two roles that I had at the Chief Human Resource Officer or the Chief Talent and Culture Officer, I had pretty much the keys to the kingdom in these organizations because nothing happens unless you have the right people with the
Mhm.
right skills in the
Mhm.
right place, focusing
Mhm.
on the right things,
Mhm.
because this is what powers our organizations.
Mhm.
So, leading through COVID as the COVID champion in
Mhm.
both of these organizations, leading through transformations, getting
Mhm.
to digitization,
Mhm.
in a very traditional banking and finance organization,
Yes. Yes.
leading through social justice
Yes.
and
Yes.
opportunities for equal opportunities for all
Mhm.
during the George Floyd era,
Yes.
leading communications in terms of what are we saying to our employees and to our stakeholders externally about who
Mhm.
we are, our
Mhm.
purpose, our brand, our mission, all of these things. Not to mention all of our real estate across the United States, where
Yes.
people report to work from New York to LA,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
What they experience when they walk in those buildings. And also, not only the employees, but our customers and stakeholders. So I
Oh,
literally had all of the things under my remit that would create moments of engagement,
yes.
moments of disengagement, and moments of truth for the organization.
Yes.
Me, this flesh and blood person, that, I could not do that alone. I don't think
No.
anybody can do it alone
No.
and
And it
walk out sane. So for me, it's leaning on the supernatural because I did come to the end of my capacity when you added all those things, plus you
yes.
added on COVID on top of it
Mhm. Mhm.
and the whole realm of uncertainty. So I literally trusted not only myself because I was prepared and had walked through storms and walked through the unthinkable sometimes in life, but I had to
Mhm.
trust on God to
Yes.
actually open my mind and
Mhm.
bless me with supernatural wisdom
Mhm.
and discernment,
Mm. Mhm.
right? So that
Mhm.
I could not only trust on me, but to trust in the higher power to help lead me, in which I could then lead the people in my organization.
So, why don't you share with me what has been some of the, and again, not giving the people's names, where you've made impact, where you know that you made personal impact on certain individuals that
Well,
actually saw this kind of leadership? Because what it is, if I were to put it in academic terms, I mean, I believe when we are a servant leader, which that's exactly who you are, we end up using several different leaderships when necessary. When we need to make change, it's transformational leadership. It's
Right.
collaboration leadership.
Right.
It's there's all different kinds of leadership that we have to use at certain points of time to move an
That's right.
organization forward in in the right way. Okay. So
Very-
where did you see impacts on certain individuals? How did certain individuals' lives change by watching you or by being sponsored by you or mentored by you? Where have you seen them go? Like
Yes.
what have you poured into and what the results have you seen in certain individuals' lives through your career? Especially, I want to know when you hit the C-suites. So
Absolutely. It's a beautiful thing, and I take no credit. And it's beyond humility. It's just that I know for a fact that
Mhm.
the work that's been in me and through me was
Mhm.
through Jesus Christ, okay, and Him alone. Because
Yeah.
a lot of people get access and opportunity, but very
Mhm.
few people allow Him to actually drive. And
Mhm.
so I
Mhm.
thank God that I have allowed Him to drive in my
Yeah.
life, because
Yeah.
I can look back from the time that I took my very first post as a supervisor on a teller line in California,
Yeah.
through branch management, area
Mhm.
management, state management.
Mhm.
And I have relationships with people that
Mhm.
started over 30 years ago. Even though I
Mm.
live in different states now that I even
Yes.
started, but I
Yes.
could pick up the phone or send a text or do a DM, and it's like it never ended. And so that's a beautiful thing. And I think it
Mm.
was because of my human-centric approach to leadership. So
Yeah.
where I was a frontline leader or if I was a C-suite leader, it was the same. My style of leadership never changed. And it
Mm.
wasn't predicated on a title, a power, or a position. It
Yes.
was predicated on making a human connection, a heart connection with people,
Yes.
and understanding what drives them, every single day. And then
Yeah.
as a leader, nurturing that, right?
Mhm.
Supporting that and helping to
Mhm.
pull through their mission and vision at the personal level through. And so, with that in mind, I can think of, a dozen just off the top of my head of individuals who served alongside of me in a
Mhm.
capacity, rather on a teller line, in a branch, in an area, in a state, or even in the C-suite, where
Mhm.
today, if you were to pick up the phone or add them to this call today, they would be able to tell you that, you know what, she is a human-centric person. She
Mhm.
leads,
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
people first, philosophy. And
Mhm.
because of her pushing, sometimes I pushed and challenged people, I am where I am today. So I have people that are CFOs in C-suites. I have people that have risen to CEOs in corporations. I have individuals who have actually started their own business, women-owned digital agile transformation companies. I have people that have actually become mayors of cities. So it's not just in banking and finance where I came from, but even outside in the nonprofit world, in ministry, people that have risen to become ministers in their own right,
Mhm.
people that have actually taken a charge of taking roles on television and talk shows. It just is a gamut of skills, talents, and abilities where people have actually, they've ebbed and flowed through industries,
Yeah.
because it's not like that specific discipline. But once you know who you are, and
Mhm.
once you know who you belong to, and that you build that confidence,
Mhm.
and not in your own abilities, but with yours and God's together, where
Mhm.
you can go, it's like all the places we will go. And I have been able to witness people actually lead at the highest level. And I've been so proud, like a proud auntie,
Yes.
on the
Yes.
sidelines, just really cheering them on and still being a resource for them where they are today.
Well, that we've had so many discussions on just on the podcast with different leaders, Rosilyn, where one leader in specific, Herman Bowles says, I find it to be a celebration when I
Mm-hmm.
know that I've been used to pour into someone who's even gone further than where I
Mm-hmm.
was, right?
Right,
And to
right.
me, what you just named is you understand your purpose and the calling of pouring into those so they can reach their destiny. And it's a celebration, no matter
That's
what
right.
level their destiny, their plan is, right?
That's right. It is a
You told me that
celebration.
it's a celebration, and,
Right.
so, I'm smiling ear to ear of just the different places of which some of the people that you've been able to touch where they have gone, and like you said, it wasn't all banking. I mean, they've gone to leadership of, you said a mayor, starting your own business. Some
Right.
are CEOs.
Right.
To me, that's when you can sit back and say, "Okay, I've left some true
Yep.
seeds of legacy," and it's more than seeds. I mean, you've actually been a part of watering those seeds and allowing the increase to happen for them, and I just say bravo.
Thank you.
That's the best news I think that we can have sort of, in this second half of our life, which is still full and still expectant, right?
That's true.
And still has a lot to fulfill. We have a lot of steps to go, but still, I think that's just a lot to say there.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I appreciate that. And I got to a place in my career. I spent 32 years in banking and finance and 5 years in nonprofit ministry. But I got to a point in my last roles where it became very clear to me that I was a different type of leader. So yes, my teams got great results. Yes, we hit our targets and exceeded them. Yes, many of my teams were award winning, right? And we had repeat success. And I wasn't this hard, like, drive it, I need this revenue or else. I wasn't that kind of a power play leader. It all remained so focused and so targeted on human-centric leading. I mean, it just, to me, it seems basic, but I have encountered so many different leaders that rule by fear and intimidation. Now they can get those results and they'll get the uptick, but it's kind of like that hockey stick. It'll drive and then it'll come up just a little bit because people will run and they'll do what you say when you are ruling with an iron thumb. But for me, the sustainability was the connectivity at the human and personal level, right, for these individuals, and then pouring into them so that they can be sustainable personally, grow personally. And then when that happened, the organization began to lift and had sustainable success. And so I understood that in the last few roles, that all the culmination of my experience and my commitment to the people and now being given, like, really the keys to the kingdom in these organizations, it all connected. And so not only did I have an opportunity to influence those that were working alongside of me within my divisions, but also several of my peers, whether it was chief legal officer, the chief financial officer, or the chief operating officer, they were benefiting because my style and my cultural sense of leadership was able to impact my organization in a profound way.
So, when you say human-centric leadership, what I also imagine when I think of the atmosphere of that kind of organization, what you're saying to all the people that you support, which because you are, I believe you empower those that we say report into, but all the folks that you empower that fall underneath you. What you're saying, it's okay to get into the human lives of people. In fact, it's almost not normal to not understand what people are going through in order to get the best productivity and for them to get the best work out of themselves. They can't hide their human side from a workplace environment. Am I correct?
You are absolutely correct. And I don't like that term, and I'm so glad you didn't use it, like report to, because I always felt like that, going back to the industrial age, like this whole idea of work was like, we have to be over their shoulders. They have to do these widgets by this amount of time, and we got to pull through on this assembly line. Like, we are no longer there. And so when people come to work, like, I feel like, I don't care if I'm in the C-suite and you're in a branch, we work together, right? We bring our talents and skills, and everybody has a purpose and a role. And our duty is to do what we do to the best of our individual ability. So I never came with this power over, like, mindset. It was always a team work, like team-centric approach. And I think people appreciate that. And being in an organization where you kind of, you do have to have widgets, right? You do have to sell how much and what by when, right? And we have to be clear of that. But there is a way to ensure that when people come to work every day, they know that their part of the productivity line is important, and that they are relied on to be accountable or responsible to do what they do.
Right.
But pouring into people as much as we want them to pour back in our organization is critical for sustainability, not only the individual, but at the organizational level as well. So, I think that, you're accurate, in what you just said. But a lot of leaders are really afraid, especially the P&L drivers. And I was one of them, right? I had a whole market, $12 billion in assets that I needed to make sure that we had sustainable net profit.
Yes.
They're afraid of that. They consider soft side of things, right? But there is a way where you can actually, bring the soft side of things and being engaged with people at the individual level with having clarity of expectations and accountability in your environment that creates a successful winning team. And most people don't want to do it. I was told when I first started working was leave your problems at the door. I'm sure many of us were told that.
That was at the beginning of my profession. Leave the problems at the door.
Leave the problems at the door. And
Yeah.
so you come into work with this mask and you're trying to do all
Mhm.
these things, but then
Mhm.
like real
Mhm.
life stuff starts happening. But
Yes.
then you have this anxiety and intensity about you personally that now is misrepresented in the workplace. So now you're
Mhm.
disengaged. Now you're not tuned in. Now you're not focused because people are just watching you, but they don't know what you're dealing with, what you actually
Mhm.
like was
Mhm.
supposed to leave at the door, but it's in your heart, or you're dealing with it
Yes.
physically in the workplace. And I
Yes.
think the great educator of that nonsense was COVID. So what I
Mm.
saw during that pandemic is everybody became a human-centric leader.
Mm.
And it was such an
So
awakening
good. Very
for
good.
the most staunch iron fist leader. It was such an awakening because it was like, wow, I guess we're not making any money if there's no people here. And not only people here, but engaged
Mhm.
people
Mhm.
that have skills that actually are committed to our organization. I mean, it
Mhm.
really became an eye opener. And so
Good.
one of my greatest fears is that the goodness that we experienced in leaders during that pandemic, when people began to ask questions like, some people, employees told me, like, my leader doesn't even know my partner's name. My leader doesn't even know, what my hobbies are. My leader, has never asked me what I want. But all of a
Mhm.
sudden during COVID, people became human.
They
And
did.
we forgot about titles. We forgot about power, right? We
Mhm.
forgot about positions, and we just tuned into each other. One of
Yes.
my greatest fears is that we would revert back to our old ways, because I
Mm.
think there was an amazing connection that happened at the human level with
Mhm.
people in a terrible situation like COVID, but we saw each other for the first time. And we
And
began to value each other in terms of
Mhm.
who, like
Mhm.
as a person,
Mhm.
right? And then we leaned into, what do you need? How do I help? How do I support you? And
Mhm.
those moments of engagement created such a high level of trust with
Mhm.
people that folks were willing to go the extra mile, right? Even when it hurt,
Mhm.
to do what they could for their organizations. Now, on the opposite side of that, those leaders that did not have the great revelation, they're struggling today.
Mhm.
They're finding it hard to keep talent, the best talent. They've had to close their doors on many occasions. Their revenues have never come back to where they were before. They've even lost some customers and other stakeholders
Mhm.
because they neglected the opportunity to connect, like the others did from those lessons learned. And so, in my opinion, if we can get back there, those that have slipped away, or if we can stay there, those that have gotten there, I know for a fact that they're still riding, in the upward tick and the sustainable customer retention, employee retention, and revenues, because there is now a level of trust and respect in their organization that is
Mhm.
allowing them to have this incredible solid foundation for building upon.
Absolutely. I mean, you said so many nuggets there. I could not. I've never heard. I've never heard it described quite the way you said it, but you were right on point about
Mhm.
COVID. What was brought out of COVID? I think two things. People did find out they could be human and be productive.
Mhm.
They found out that it doesn't have to so much take being in the same space, but you can even connect when your heart really has to connect,
That's right.
right? And they had to do it through right technology, right?
Technology. Yes.
And so you can't be more than correct that there was so much that came out of that. People had to bring their family, their human problems to
Mhm.
the technology screen. They
Right.
had to understand what was going on in each other's families, how this was affecting their family, how it was affecting their family members, right? Near and far.
Correct.
So, and they had to deal with that and be productive and do what they could do because no one had control of any situation. They all lost control. God had control.
God had control. And
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 so
Lisa,
that,
so go ahead.
no, 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 no. Go ahead. I think I know where you're going. Go ahead.
No, and I think that,
Mhm.
that's a moment of truth, right?
Yes.
And I mentioned
Yes.
earlier about all of us having that level of where we end our own individual capacity.
Yes.
And so, that's where, for me personally, and people that are believers like me, they really
Mhm.
saw the supernatural for the first time.
Yes.
And, I had to sell a bank during COVID.
Oh my goodness.
So our parent company, our global company, divested from the United States during the pandemic. So imagine, coming off of the George Floyd situation and all
Yes.
the, the pain and heartache and exhaustion that we all experienced there, trying to like as people, can we just be human? Can we just love each other? Can we,
Yes,
do the right thing, right?
yes,
Then
yes.
into like the serious unknown and the sicknesses and the deaths and all of those things that were impacting your employees,
Mm-hmm.
you personally, as a leader. And then you get a call that says, hey, you're being sequestered because we're in the negotiation and we're leaving the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like the next level of hardship that, for me personally,
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was at the end of my personal capacity. So I actually, in the last two homes I've owned, have had a special place. I went from my bedside to my closet and now into a room that's considered my prayer and meditation room. And I
Mm-hmm.
made it a habit to never work in this room because this is a sacred place where I
Yeah.
come and I get replenished, where I
Yes.
can reflect and I can rest, and I can spend time with the Lord. But after I was sequestered, the Holy Spirit said, get into that room. So I literally sequestered in this room.
Yes.
And I relied on the higher level, the higher power, the anointing of God, the
Mm-hmm.
supernatural discernment, wisdom, and knowledge from heaven of God to
Mm-hmm.
literally rest upon me. I prayed for it. I asked for it. I didn't know how to talk to people who are worried about their own personal lives and the lives of their family members. And now financially, they're going to step into an environment where, am I going to have a job? Am I not going to have a job?
Mm-hmm.
All these types of things. And the truth is, during a major acquisition of this nature, there was clearly people that weren't going to have a job,
Mm-hmm.
including yours truly. Because when you talk about the C-suite, it's only one C-suite needed for each company.
That's
So
right.
how do you deal with that and still lead in a very confident, competent way that's bringing life and inspiration to people to not give up? So
Mm-hmm.
I experienced that, during that COVID season, but
How
I
did
did
you lead during that
absolutely.
time?
Yeah. So I did work in my prayer room, and there
Mm-hmm.
were times between Zoom calls just like this where I just said, need a moment. And I got on my knees and I prayed. There was times where I literally laid out on the floor
Mm-hmm.
because like it was so unbearable that, God, if you don't do it, it just won't get done. Like we need you. And I literally prayed for the employees, 20,000 people in the United States.
Wow.
I prayed for my leaders, my CEO. I mean, I prayed for just wisdom and discernment for every single person that would
Mm-hmm.
make a decision or take an action that would impact not only our employees, but our customers,
Yes.
that we would come out, into the light and into a bright and better day, and that there will be opportunities for people. The second thing I prayed for is that God would give me the right words because I had to hold this knowledge. As many know, when you're in a transaction like this, you have this knowledge months in advance, but yet show up to meetings and calls, without giving false hope, but also with having that poker face to that we got to get this work done today, but knowing
Yeah.
like 3 months later that we were going to drop a bomb,
Yes.
on them. So then when the bomb drops, how do you hold people together in the midst of this environment where people literally feel like they're losing it?
Yes.
And my testimony is that God did that. And so as a C-suiter and a corporate executive, some kind of way, he mixed that in a non-threatening way where I can get on a call with believers and non-believers and speak to them about who they are, what they
Mm-hmm.
know, what
So
they've walked through in life, right?
yes.
And the
Yes.
skills and the abilities and talents that is indifferent to the brand that's on
Mm-hmm.
top of your head in terms of who
Mm-hmm.
you work for. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was amazing as I listened to the Holy Spirit, like literally speak into the hearts and souls and lives of people, to
Yeah.
give people hope. And as I
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, some of those people on that call are now leading at their next level. Some stayed in financial services. Some went into, technology and insurance fields.
Mm-hmm.
Some actually wrote books. Others, as I mentioned, are now running their own organizations.
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't take that lightly. And I now understood that the culmination of all the things that I went through was for that moment and for this moment today. It actually brought everything together where I can confidently tell people that, yes, we're leading, we're walking, we're working through uncertainty. But if you
Yes.
just don't give up, if you just believe, that you too will make it through. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
good about that because I had to be bold in that, to take that position. But I
Mm-hmm.
knew God was working it out. And I then began to step into my ministry. And
Mm.
my ministry is a marketplace ministry. where you can certainly allow your light to shine just by the way that you model every single day and represent him in all that you do, being consistent, right? In who you are and who you believe in.
That is more than correct. That's absolutely right. I want to switch it over. When you said a marketplace ministry, let me switch this over for a minute. I think maybe I know your answer, but I want you to say it. But what have you noticed with people who are capable of initiating change for the better? Because, what you did is that could be a case study, a business case study within itself, what you had to go through with COVID. That's change management initiatives. I mean, at a whole nother level, right? Having to manage change and go through and that the foundation of it was the fact that you prayed for 20,000 employees. You prayed for the C-suite executives, the CEO. And then these people they've gone on to even do better things, right? A lot of them you have followed through. The prayers of the righteous availeth much. So what have you noticed about people who are capable of initiating change? Why are they hesitant, Rosilyn? And what do they seem to compromise the most?
Fear. I really think there's the spirit of intimidation or the spirit of fear. And most of the time, it's that fear of what people will think. It's the most competent people in terms of skills and experiences. They have the answer. They literally have the answer. And it's like the world's waiting for you. But you're afraid of what people will think. Many times people say, well, they're afraid to fail. Nah, because most of them that have the answer, they failed before. They're just afraid of what people will think. And sometimes it's linked to their actual compensation. So when you think about the workplace, it's like, oh, I can't go there. Oh, I have to walk this line very, very carefully because I'm financially dependent, right, on this person or this organization or this system. So if I go too far, then I could absolutely maybe experience this financial risk, right? So what are people going to think when they know, what I'm saying, that I'm actually pushing this forward, this cause, this agenda, or I'm going to challenge the status quo because in the end, I know that it's going to end up in a dead zone, but they are afraid. And I always used to tell my team members, like, if you were independently wealthy, how would you make this decision? Like, if you were independently wealthy, how would you make this decision?
Let's start there.
Let's start there. Because I feel like, and I did this exercise for me, like if I was independently wealthy and had no financial risk, would I tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, even to the CEO? If I knew it was a bad decision, if I knew it was a bad act, would I stand up and tell the truth? And I think that's a challenging question for people. But most of the time, we find ourselves in the workplace afraid to speak up, afraid to speak out, afraid to challenge the status quo because of that major financial risk. And, then the reason why I say this is because of my time in HR, I only spent 7 years there, but it was a lifetime. And all of the HR executives and leaders know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Okay. But in 7 years there, I followed some trends. And I followed the trends of the people who actually resigned. And they give you a 2-week notice, a 1-month notice, whatever it was, depending on their role. It was such freedom that I noticed in those people. They looked different. The stress was gone, in many cases. And they were actually more outwardly expressive. They began to communicate even more proactively to the point of some people writing a dissertation on things that they would do different.
Yeah.
And I know that built up over months, years, weeks, but they didn't feel comfortable bringing this forward.
Yes.
So, and that was because of the trust issue probably between them and their leaders, right? And that financial risk tied to it. So once you fill out that resignation, mostly you have another job. So you got some financial freedom on the other side. And now you're willing to be real, take the mask off and truly help this organization. So if I had a magic wand, I would make everybody at least a millionaire.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Everybody's a millionaire where we work. Now what?
So
now
let's make decisions differently, right?
Yeah, can we be real? Now can we help this organization?
Exactly. Well, let me ask you sort of on a personal note where, we know, your industry, banking industry is not easy. It is a constant checks and balances of making sure that you, for you have a strong foundation. There's nothing that's going to make you make a decision outside of integrity. but we
Correct.
know that we're always tempted with some kind of situation. Where have you had to lead your people to make sure they made the right decision and did not compromise the
Right.
organization or compromise a decision that needed to be made? And
You
where
know,
did you sit there and say, well, should we or should we not? I mean, what's a personal experience you could share?
oh my gosh, there's so many. But I'm going to say that, the major one is not like my employees. Like I have found that if you hire the right people, you have less to worry about. A lot of leaders
Mhm.
are so upset,
Mhm.
even when we like, oh, we're going to work from home. Like, can we trust them? Are they going to be there taking care of their kids? Are they
But
going to
the
be
right
like,
people,
out in the street? I mean, come
yeah,
on. I mean, those are things we shouldn't have had to worry about because if you hire the right people, then you could absolutely
yeah.
trust them. But
And
that's
what you
that's
found
another
is they
topic.
actually were working more hours when you found out.
Yeah.
They actually, after the kids would go to bed, they would put in another 3, 4
Yes.
hours in the evening. That's just a whole
Yes.
nother topic, but
Absolutely.
yes,
So
go
that's
ahead.
another topic for another podcast, but it still
But
sticks with me
yes,
because it was
yes,
such a lesson learned. But in
absolutely.
any case, the people that I had to challenge the most were not the actual rank and file employees. It was the leaders. It was the decision makers. It was the
Mm,
power brokers in the organization. Because
mhm,
it's easy to make, when things get tough, the first thing that you want to go to actually remain profitable is the people. It's the payroll line, right? It's compensation and
mhm,
benefits. That's the
mhm,
largest expense in an organization. That's the easy way. So my challenge was always, let's go the hard way. That's an easy way. That's the expected way.
mhm,
So in order for us to arrive in our future as an organization as real winners, what other hard decisions can we make as leaders? And so we were challenged with giving up a piece of our bonus structure. I had to communicate that. Now, I wasn't the author of that decision, but I certainly was the supporter of that. Things
mhm,
are as rough as they're going to get. So are we
mhm,
going to fire 10,000 tellers or are we going to give up our bonus for the year?
mm.
Oh, that's a tough decision, right? So again, I wasn't the author of that idea, but I was a supporter of the idea
Supportive.
because in
Right.
the end of the day, when your people know that you took a hit for them, and I'm not talking about their compensation, I'm talking about a bonus.
A
Oh boy,
bonus.
right.
Yes. Yes.
That's one example. The other example is also on the cost of insurance. As we know, benefits costs go up and up every year. And
Mhm,
I had to take a look when I took the seat at our overall structure in our organization to say, how much out of pocket are our employees paying relative to their annual compensation, right? And
mhm,
so when I looked closely along with my benefits leader and said, God help us, our tellers were paying the same amount of money as our C-suiters. Does anybody else see that this is a problem? So when you look at the out-of-pocket cost of a teller and they're paying up to 60 and 70% in insurance
mhm.
of their take-home pay, and then you look at a C-suite and it's like barely 5 or 10%, something's wrong with this picture. So we
Yes.
need to have the great equalizer. And so
Yes.
now let's have a premium, like compensation-based level premium process where it's like equal sacrifice, right? But
Mhm.
it's if I am a C-suiter, I need to be paying more so that I can relieve the financial pressure off of the lower paid employees. And so
Yes.
we did that. It wasn't very popular. I had to challenge people, okay? And not just C-suiters, senior managers alike. I had to challenge them to change their mindset. So that
Yes.
was that was a hard one as well. And the last one I would mention is that, during the actual pandemic, when it came to, you saw a lot of organizations increasing the hourly pay,
Mhm,
for what we called our essential employees. So we hadn't actually done that yet. So I
mhm.
had to challenge the line again at the C-suite level to say and present to them and the board why this was the best decision. So it wasn't a proactive effort. It took some pushing and prodding and some discussions about being human-centric, pouring into your people so they pour back into you.
Mm. And showing by action that you're doing that. What you did, those decisions you made, to me spoke volumes to the fact that you were human-centric.
Correct.
You made these tough decisions that probably that were not popular, but they were the right decisions. I
They
love
were
when
the
you
right decisions.
yeah, do you
Correct.
get rid of these many tellers' jobs or do we just cut the C-suite executive bonus? It's those are high level business ethical integrity decisions. So very good.
Thank you. I think that, having the people continue to run and remain engaged and do their jobs to the best of their abilities. I mean, that's what you want to be sustainable. And so we were real sustainable. We did really good and we delivered a profitable organization. So much so that we had a suitor that was like, hey, y'all look great. So, and then our parent company was like, okay, if the price is right, so nobody buys a failing institution. So we were
Right.
doing extremely well, and we delivered an extremely profitable and an engaged employee population with people who were in love with their brand. And it's so interesting that we are 4 years post that sale, and there is a group of employees who established an actual group meet and
Mhm.
chat of the old brand, and they meet regularly to keep up with each other, to support each other, and it's a whole new another bank now. And so some folks that are in that group are still with the new bank, and some of them have moved on, but that human-centric culture, is still being cultivated today. So when you think of legacy,
Mhm.
I'm just like, thank you, God. Thank you, Lord, for giving me the opportunity to bring the light. And so that as humans, people connected, and even in the workplace, and that brand is no longer here, that they still are connected, as people that are doing good for each other and then for the greater good for our community.
That's wonderful, Rosilyn. That's wonderful. That's what this is all about. This is what it's all
Right.
about. It's getting those kind of results. Um, and I think as leaders of those kind of initiatives, or those kind of trying to move people into that direction, that is where we can make one change at a time, one grassroots level change at a time. And I always say it's even grassroots, even if you're a global CEO, because that's just
That's
one
right.
company, right? One company at a time, one community at a time. So I think that's great. Let me ask you something. Let's switch over to women. Let's switch over to a little bit of inclusion question
Mhm.
here.
Mhm.
What do you believe are the challenges facing women professionally, and how should they respond without compromising?
Sadly, the challenges are the same from the women's suffrage movements to where we are today. We made some small progression
Mhm.
where we've seen like some doors open for women at the higher echelons of leadership and even onto boards. But we also
Mhm.
have seen some, recession from those numbers most recently. And it's politically charged, unfortunately, I believe,
Mhm.
because you could actually see the differences in the marketplace and in boardrooms when there is a forward agenda toward women and when there is not. And
Mhm.
so I'm disappointed at some of the most recent numbers that I saw for women, and especially women of color,
Mhm.
where those opportunities are slow going. At
Mhm.
one time, during the Obama administration, there
Mhm.
was a massive increase in women in the C-suite, women on boards, and then women of color actually getting opportunities. There's an
Mhm.
incredible insights by McKinsey and Company, who has been
Mhm.
studying this for, it's got to be 8 to 10 years now.
Mhm.
That's it's out there that you can pull up and look in terms of the data that I'm referencing. But it's really not about competency. I remember reading one of their studies, McKinsey and Company, where they showed the man and the woman coming out of college and going into entry levels in corporations, right? So they're
Mhm.
here equally educated,
Mhm.
going into a
Mhm.
role. They even
Mhm.
went so far to say, well, the men had aspirations to get to leadership as soon as possible. The women
Mhm.
just, wanted to just do their job. Over the
Mhm.
period of time, you saw the next level, they were equal, right? Many of the women still going to school, getting master's degrees, right? So
Mhm.
from an
Mhm.
educational level, higher educated, and then women of color, specifically African American women, even more educated with more MBA and more PhD, right? But
Mhm.
then you see this divide. So as the men then go shift from middle manager, they get the senior roles quicker,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
The women
Mhm.
stay at middle manager.
Yes.
Then you also see the women that in the middle manager role, they're specifically targeted towards customer service,
Mhm.
operations, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
even human resources. When then the
Mhm.
men, they still continue to go way, way up the ladder, into, I would say, a C-2, like so C-suite -2 positions. And for
Mhm.
women, it is such a large lift from going from that middle manager to there to the C-2, because there's not enough women that are going to senior manager. So there is that
Mm.
run right there. That is a huge gap. And why is that? Where we see the men, even the ones that didn't even want to go there, are in those positions. Well, it could be a myriad of reasons. One could be some women like starting families, leaving the workforce and coming back, some
Yeah.
deciding not to come back. Or it could be uh, some that just literally are tired and exhausted, working hard and still
Mhm.
not getting noticed. And
Mhm.
the third piece for me is those ones that are working hard, that are not exhausted, and just not getting opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like we have to continue to press. We have to continue to break through the glass. And we have to continue as women to help identify, once we get there, other qualified women who can take these jobs.
And what does that look like? How do you? Yes.
For me personally, I've actually got a T-shirt for it, because I have at least 5 women that I personally, at least 5 off
I
the top
love
of
it.
my head, that I personally pulled up. And what
Yes.
I think it means is being intentional, not
Mm-hmm.
only like as the leader looking for talent, but for me, even as the CHRO, when I'm working with a search firm or my internal recruiters, making sure that I
You're
have got a
maintaining those names.
diversified slate of qualified candidates.
Yeah.
There was
Yes.
more than one time where I had a senior executive position, including a C-suite role, where I
Yes.
was given a list of all one gender or one ethnicity. And
Mm.
so asking the right questions and challenging that status
Yes.
quo is how
Yes.
we do it. And
Yes.
so I was able to get a diversified slate. And I'm not saying, well, I'm only going to give the job to the woman. I'm looking for the most qualified candidate for that job. And if I'm looking at what we look like in terms of the makeup of our C-suite or the senior management or the officer level, and we have not one woman, and if I have both equal, I'm going to diversify that department. I'm going to diversify that team,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so being very targeted and focused and disciplined around that, I think helps
Mm-hmm.
us to remain committed to what we say we know is the right for business. But if no one's there to actually challenge it, and I've actually seen my male counterparts take the same approach. Most of these males had daughters who were in the workforce or who were coming up. And many of them said to me, like, this is not right. Like, I want my daughter to get an opportunity. So I'm going to make sure that I'm practicing these behaviors and I'm modeling this for my other male counterparts, those that are on my level, those that are below me, to say, I'm asking for a diversified slate of candidates.
Yeah. So, because what I think the main word for me, Rosilyn, is it's about having access. It's accessibility. It's creating accessibility, and that's what you're doing. I think that goes with even when we were trying to diversify the student populations across universities, in the United States. I mean, it's not about whether it's we can find, it's not about whether they're qualified. It's providing access. And that's
Correct.
what we're doing.
Correct.
And I think that is where, when we talk about women, when we talk about just inclusion overall, that's
where it is.
That's where it is.
100%. And so for me, I believe, yes, access is critical to the process. Many times we were spending a lot of dollars on training to make sure that people are prepared and they're ready. And to me, that came from a different mindset, because of the assumption was that because we were absent from those environments, that we just didn't have the skill set. And that was far from the truth, because in my role as being able to look at the enterprise, like literally top to bottom, I can see where the competencies were and were not. And I didn't find that to be true. It's a fallacy. So less time on do some training and develop to make sure we have people that are prepared, right, from a skill set and competency perspective, but spend more time giving access. And that next one I would say is sustainability, because it's one thing to get there, but it's another thing to stay there. And so that's where the training needs to be.
I'm going to push on that just a little bit. I know our time is coming to an end, but push into that a little bit. There's one thing to provide the access, but there's another thing to sustain what you've provided.
Correct.
And so what does that look like in a healthy corporate atmosphere to sustain what you have provided access to?
Correct. So that's where, to me, the heavy on the dollar spent should be shifted, especially when you're talking about the junior, senior, executive level positions, because we've never been there before. Okay. So we don't know the dynamics of this playground. And so spending time to make sure that that individual, once they get to that seat, they know team dynamics. They know how to operate effectively in the boardroom or in the C-suite, because most likely you're going to be the one and only. Okay. If not, you're blessed. So maybe executive coaching, maybe another training program, a personal development program, to workshops, making sure that person has access. If you don't have it internally in your environment, then make sure that they have access to go get that level of training outside by attending events and workshops. And also mentorship, I believe, is important as well as coaching for each new level that you've never been before.
Right. And what about the social dynamic of the workplace? What about the sensitivity of I've always said there's a sensitivity of understanding of who's around you and what's appropriate to say, what's not appropriate to say, and understanding even down to team building activities and things that happen after work or before work or on the
Correct.
weekend. Just, I think that's also part of the sustainability.
Correct. And that's where I was
Yeah.
talking about the workshops and also the mentorships and the
Yes,
coaching, because that's where that
yes,
comes in.
yes, absolutely,
Because
absolutely.
there's a lot that happen before and after a meeting. But
Yes,
if you've never been there before, you have no clue.
you have
So I,
no.
I think it's critical, for especially for women and
Mhm,
also, really diverse people, because again, we don't know the rules of the game. And so if we can understand that better, we can be less misunderstood,
mhm,
right? And
mhm,
also we can be more confident and comfortable in these environments when we have that coach or that
mhm,
mentor that's there to observe
mhm,
and to
mhm,
give feedback.
mhm.
You need both.
That's good. That's excellent. That's excellent. And let me ask you a few more questions. I'm gonna bring it to an end. What leaders have inspired you?
Well, I've had several leaders that have inspired me. I think the first one is T.D. Jakes. I had an opportunity to be a parishioner in the church, but also work for him personally for over 5 years.
Mhm.
And one of the things he told me was never let what you do define who you are.
Who you
And
are.
I actually put that on a sticker and put it on my desktop. It was a message that he was speaking, and it was just one line that he said in that. And I've lived by that principle, because if you see that people, when you're not in that position, you don't have that title, or you don't even have the money you used to have, we don't know who we are. And I never wanted to be that. And we see that all the time, athletes,
Mhm,
others,
mhm,
actors, actresses. And I always wanted to be pure and just be who I am and never let what I do, right, or my title define me. So that has inspired me to this day. The second one is my mentor. She's been my mentor for over 20 years. Her name is Dr. Kathy Moffett. She's actually in Dallas,
mhm.
Texas, and she's
Yeah.
CEO of Heartfelt International Ministries.
Yes.
And I watched her as a corporate executive at TXU, and then
Mhm,
also someone being committed wholeheartedly to Jesus Christ and a ministry of doing good for all. She's inspired me greatly to be a better mom, to be a better friend, sister, wife, and to be a better leader. So
mhm,
I'm very inspired by her. And then from an academic perspective, I was in my early years inspired by John Maxwell and all of
mhm,
his books. And I've
mhm.
had the opportunity to actually share a stage with him in a conference many years
Did
ago.
you?
I
Wow.
did, and I took a picture with him, and he's just an amazing human, and he loves the Lord. And
Yes.
so, not knowing him from afar, going back to the mid '90s and reading many of his books, they spoke to me because they were always people, human centric. And so, I believe the leaders that truly bring the light, and the leaders who understand that there is a bigger calling,
Mhm,
above your position and title,
mhm.
and that know that my seat as a leader is literally a missionary, and I'm a missionary
Mm,
to do good, to be
mhm,
good, and to make
mhm.
good things happen.
Mm, mm. So good, Rosalind. So good.
Yeah.
Because I think that what you just said applies to our whole purpose no matter what we do, right?
Right. That's
That's
right.
who we are. Because
Right.
really what you're talking about is a representation of who we know is the ultimate leader that we have, uh, that we have met.
Absolutely.
The
Yeah.
ultimate
So when
leader.
you answer
Yes,
to a higher calling, like
yes.
you said earlier, like you know what I do is always going to be above the line, and it's
Gotta
going to
be
be
above the
done with
line.
the
That's right.
highest level of ethics, the highest level of integrity, because
That's
I am
right.
not afraid of what could happen on this earth. If I fail in my morality, I'm more
That's right.
concerned about my soul, right, and
That's
where I
right.
will rest, in eternity.
That's right. That's right. And, my last question is what would you have told yourself in your 20s?
Don't do that, girl. Don't do that. Don't do that, girl. No. No. Oh my gosh. No, but I would have
I love
absolutely,
asking. That's my favorite last question to
girl,
ask.
don't do that, girl. No,
I'm taking you from where you are now, and I'm like, all of a sudden, what would you have told yourself in your 20s?
girl, stay home.
Hey, oh, oh, goodness.
Oh
Oh,
Lord.
my goodness.
That's another
Don't
podcast. That's
that's
another
another
podcast. But
podcast.
but
It
but I
is. That
literally,
could be one by itself, couldn't it?
no, totally. But I really believe, like, in my 20s, if I would have known my worth, man, like
I know.
I didn't know my worth. It's like I would have
Yeah.
just said, girl, you know what? Your price is above rubies. Like literally,
Mm,
you are a gift. You are a treasure, you know?
Yes.
So like pour into yourself, like literally love yourself. Don't
Hmm.
look for anybody to love you. Like focus on you. Be the best version of yourself and just
Yeah.
focus on that. And the rest will come.
And the rest will come.
Yeah.
Well, I want to just say, Rosilyn, thank you so much for being on the podcast, but I want to thank you for being authentically
Thank
you, the way
you.
God has created you to be. You have lived it out. You
Yes.
don't talk it, you walk it.
Amen.
And I have been a front row witness for I don't know how many years. See if Lauren is 22. Gosh, I've known you for 17 years, 16
At
years.
least. Yeah.
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 And so, I have admired you. I have missed you, when I think of your names. So I couldn't think of a better place to have you on the podcast. But you fill my cup even during this hour. It is
It's
filled.
mutual. It's
It
mutual.
really is. You're an amazing, amazing leader.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for having me. This has been an amazing hour for me too.